Welcome back to another episode of Fenway Finale. We're excited to finally talk about a Red Sox team playing some good baseball. They have won 4 of their last 5 and coming off back-to-back great all-around performances. Tonight, I'm here with James as we break down the series in St. Louis. James, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great, and obviously much better with a Red Sox series win. Friday night obviously didn't start off too great, especially against former Red Sox Dustin May, but Red Sox really picked it up the last 2 nights. Wilson Contreras stays red hot at the plate against one of his former teams. Trevor Story with an excellent performance today offensively, 4 hits. The Red Sox finally playing some good complementary team baseball, and the key, as we said, going into the Brewers series was starting to stack series wins to dig themselves out of that early hole. And thus far they've done that the last 2 series, winning the Milwaukee series, now taking 2 out of 3 against St. Louis. It's still going to take a bit to get themselves out of that hole, but all you can ask for is continue to stack series wins on top of each other, and the rest will follow.
I totally agree with you on that. My biggest thing was the 2 pitching performances in back. Honestly, Connolly early in game 1 was okay. He had another command issues. He only got 4 in the 3rd innings. I think when we get into game 1, we'll talk about, I think Cora pulled him a little too early, and there was a chance he could have gone 5 innings and got the chance to win that game. But the back-to-back pitching performances by Ranger Suárez and Brayan Bello were really encouraging. And the 3rd time through the order for the starting rotation has been very, very good as a whole. So the Red Sox are finally getting the starting pitching that they expected this season, and that's how they're going to win games. So this series, they finally put everything together, especially in the last 2 games. So I was very encouraging going forward.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of encouraging, positive takeaways from this weekend series, that we can dive into now. And I think first and foremost, Wilson Contreras stays red hot. He was. I know a lot of people have been saying it, but he's one of the main people that showed up ready to go from the jump this season, not just recently.
No, I totally agree. And he's becoming one of the best hitters in the American League at the moment so far this season. He's really sparking the squad. Cora had a cool interview after the game today where he's telling everybody he's becoming a clubhouse leader. They expected just a right-handed hitter to come in and kind of replace Bregman's production. But now they're really getting a guy who could replace him in the clubhouse as well. And he's kind of starting to become that leader on the Red Sox. So that is really good to see. That's a question we've brought up in the past. Who is going to become the leader in this clubhouse? And right now it looks like Wilson Contreras is stepping up to be that guy.
Absolutely. I think we touched, especially a couple of weeks ago, on Bregman being that missing piece in terms of leadership. But right now, Contreras, both with his play on the field and his leadership in the clubhouse, we saw his passion and his fire in the Milwaukee series, especially in game 1, kind of take over. And that was the spark that they needed, even though they lost that game. I think that was the jolt that kind of got them going, took the next 2, and then obviously went to St. Louis this weekend, took 2 out of 3 behind Contreras' bat, but he, was unbelievable in the Milwaukee series. But I think that Monday night game where he got hit was fired up at Woodruff, Pat Murphy, the rest of the Brewers. The Red Sox needed to play with some energy and aggression. We're looking for a spark. And even though that game resulted in a loss, I think that's what kickstarted them, with no pun intended with the high Spike's high slide to Hamilton. But I think, that energy and passion that he showed has been infectious and has carried over to everyone on the team.
Yeah. So, on our last show, we talked about it. The Red Sox really needed to win 5 of their next 6. In St. Louis and Minnesota. They already lost the first one. We'll get into that next. We'll talk about Friday's loss after this. But do you think there's a very good chance that they continue this good play?
And not sure what happened to Nick there, but all right. I was finishing your question essentially with, do I think there's a good chance that they continue this in Minnesota? Yeah, I do, especially with the pitching matchups coming up with Crochet and with Gray going in the series. You have your 2 best pitchers on the mound. I think there's obviously Minnesota, we can get into Minnesota a bit. They have the most wins in the American League, tied with Cleveland. Cleveland's 9-6, Minnesota's 9-7, coming off a series where they went to Toronto and took 2 out of 3, winning the last 2. But when you look at the pitching matchups going into this midweek series with Crochet, Gray, and then early, not just your 2 best pitchers, probably right now your 3 best pitchers. Yes, I do think they have a good chance to keep this momentum going, especially with Ober and Micah Bell going on the other side, 2 guys who have struggled thus far for the Twins, despite them having a winning record. It lines up perfectly for them. I really think the pitching matchups in the next series line up well. And what we talked about, going into these 2 series was getting out of there 5 out of 6 and getting to 9-9 going into the Detroit series. And right now they're still on pace to do so. Obviously you need a sweep, but even if for some reason, you take 2 out of 3, you're still at 8-10 going back home. Not the worst situation in the world given the 2-8 start.
Yeah, and my connection cut out a few times there, but I heard exactly what you said. I do want to bring up the comment from Bradley here, kind of
Yeah.
reiterating exactly what we said about Bregman and Contreras' leadership in the clubhouse. I think that's really important to talk about one more time because it's exactly what we were talking about, exactly what a lot of people were talking about. This team needs a leader, and as soon as he steps up as a leader, they start to play better. So they just
Yep.
needed one guy to do that. They were obviously more talented than how they were playing to begin the season. They were obviously going to get back to the mean, but when they fell in that big of a hole, they needed to respond quickly. If they can continue this over to Minnesota, win 2 out of the next, I think it'll be fine if they win the next 2 out of 3, but they have to continue winning series. So I think that's great to talk. We'll get it later into the more in depth with the next series later, but let's talk about Friday's loss. There's a lot of
Yeah.
things to talk about. It was a disgusting loss. We were very upset after that loss, and I'm glad the team responded after that, but I think we need to talk about Friday. So you told me you had a lot of notes about Friday, so if you want to kick it off and lead it off, you can.
Yeah, I just think overall going into the series, you had won the last two against Milwaukee, and obviously a bit of a moot point now winning the last two, but you had a chance to keep carrying the momentum, and the offense just didn't show up. Only 5 hits against that Cardinals pitching staff, and only one went for extra bases. So, Dustin May came into the game with an ERA just under 16. He was a guy who pitched for you last year, 6 starts. You gave up James Tibbs for him, and he had not pitched. He didn't pitch well for you last summer, and he hadn't pitched well for the Cardinals thus far, and you made him look like prime Jacob deGrom out there. 6 innings, scattered 4 hits, 2 runs, only one of them was earned. He also struck out 4 batters, lowered the ERA by 6.5 runs. And the Red Sox just couldn't get anything going offensively. There was no rhythm. Tough 8th inning as well overall. Just that they had the chance there to tie the game or potentially take the lead and didn't do anything. Caleb Durbin didn't have great at bats on Friday night, and overall missed opportunities. And listening to the coaching staff after the game, especially Cora, I know Cora and Fatsy talked after the game about May. They both reiterated that May was throwing harder and more strikes than he had in his previous 2 starts this season. And then getting into the decision to bring on Kelly there instead of another right-handed reliever. AC said he was a strike thrower, but he didn't throw strikes today, and that was part of the reason why he went to him. But ultimately, it didn't pay off with him giving up the lead, and ultimately that was the difference in the game. So, I think Friday night was just one of those things where it was a frustrating loss at the moment, especially dropping to 4-9 overall. Rebounded nicely on Saturday and Sunday, but still a missed opportunity to sweep the series and really pick up another game and kind of dig yourself out of that hole.
I agree with you on that. So after Friday night's loss, the late game, there was a lot of Cora discourse on Red Sox Twitter, including for myself. If you guys go back and look at my posts on Twitter, I had a lot to say about Alex Cora. But the main thing I had a disagreements with him in that game was taking Connolly out early. He comes out for the 5th. He gets the 1 out. He looks good in the 5th inning. Let's take it back, actually, an inning. The 4th inning, he had his first 1-2-3 inning of the game. He finally settled down. They let him go out for the 5th for 1 out, and then they pull him, and immediately Kelly blows it for him, and then the Red Sox lose that game by a run. I think Connolly early was set up to go an extra 2 outs, get 2 more outs, set the bullpen up a little bit nicer. You don't have to.
Yeah, and Early's pitch count was only at Early's pitch count was at 86. So the pitch count was climbing a bit. Cora touched on that after the game. Nick, he said Early was good but not efficient, especially early in the game. Obviously had the 1-2-3 inning in the 4th, which I think allowed him to go back out for the 5th. It seemed like AC wanted to pull Early had he labored through the 4th a bit. He said the 4-seamer was better for Early today than it was in the start against San Diego. The sinker was his best swing and miss pitch, but the changeup really wasn't there. And overall, he was off and on with his command, which led to some laborious innings. But yeah, Bradley, Early did probably still have another couple outs in the tank, at least one more out. And Cora's point about going to Kelly because he was a strike thrower and not having it. Well, I don't know how efficient Kelly has been with throwing strikes, so I'm not really sure.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that.
Or the right answer. Yeah, it's like, all right, if you wanted to go to Kelly, sure. I don't think the reasoning there was right, like him being a strike thrower. Like, I think at that point, just say, hey, it was the 5th inning. We didn't want to burn, not Slayton. We didn't want to burn Whitlock or, some other high leverage guy. We wanted to go to a righty for the matchups there, and that's who you go to in the 5th inning. But yeah, Early obviously was at 86 pitches, probably still had a bit more in the tank. So I agree there, Bradley.
You brought up Slayton accidentally there, and I do want to bring up. I don't think we actually brought it up on the show at all
with the
yet.
IL stint. Yep.
Yeah, so I do want to talk about that and how it's going to affect this bullpen. And they need another right-handed pitcher if Slayton's going to be out for a significant period of time. And right now, we don't really know how long he's going to be out for. So we'll talk about it. Every time the Red Sox pitcher has gone 6 innings, they've won the baseball game.
Yep.
Every time the Red Sox pitcher hasn't gone 6 innings, they didn't win the game. So the Red Sox are going to have to rely. They're not going to go 6 innings every time, and especially a guy like Connolly Early, who's a rookie. And he doesn't go through 5 innings. The Red Sox need an extra guy in that bullpen who they can count on. And Zach Kelly's not one of those guys. Every 1 out of 5 outings, he looks like this guy who's dominant. He could be a back inning guy who we can rely on. But those other 4 outings, he kind of sucks. He's not a reliable back inning arm or back of the rotation or back of the bullpen arm. The Red Sox need,
and that's why they brought him. And that's why they brought him in the 5th. But no, I completely agree with you. That's probably why they were looking for a spot for him.
I just without Slayton, this bullpen is just goes from really good to pretty average, in my opinion.
Solid.
Yeah. So I think they're going to miss Slayton, and it's just something we haven't brought up on the show yet. So I think we should touch on it.
Yeah. And I think going back to Kelly, there are times where you see it with Zach, he's pumping strikes in there. He's the Ks are high, and it's like, why can't he just fully unlock that? Because the stuff can be there, but it's all about consistency. And obviously he hasn't been consistent in his time with the Sox, and that's kind of why he's been up and down, especially the last couple of years.
Zach Kelly did it again today. We'll talk about it later, but Zach Kelly is not a guy that I want to keep giving opportunities to. He's been up here for multiple seasons. I know the stuff's there, but right now it's not going to happen in the major leagues for the Boston Red Sox.
Bradley, answering your question about Tolley being the arm that takes the place of Slayton, I don't think so, just because they want to use Tolley in the rotation, and I think there's going to be an opportunity for Tolley down the road to pitch in the rotation. I think that's how they want to continue to develop him. Now, obviously, with him still needing to develop the secondary pitches, with the fastball and average secondary stuff, he would probably play more in the bullpen right now. But I think, long term, they want to develop him into what, Warren or Schlittler have become for New York, that kind of, high end arm with velocity. And I think he's best suited in the rotation. So in the short term, no. And I think the Slayton injury is where the Oviedo injury really comes into play. And I know Oviedo had been used more in a piggyback role as a longer man in the bullpen. But when you think about another righty that was effective going down, that's kind of where the ripple effect of now losing Oviedo and Slayton, this soon into the season really kind of takes a hit into your bullpen depth a little bit. But we'll see. I mean, I think if they get to a point in the summer, Bradley, where they think they could use Tolley in a spot in the bullpen, because the rotation is fine tuned and doesn't need a replacement at that point, but they still want to take advantage of the skill set that Tolley brings, then yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw he made one appearance in New York last year in the postseason, just faced one batter, threw all fastballs, but he, you see what kind of guy he can be out of the bullpen, and we'll see what the team needs, what they do at the deadline, but whether it's taking the place of Slayton or not, if it's a bullpen replacement and they decide to go to Tolley in that sort of role, I could see that happening more than just taking Slayton's spot. But it's an interesting dilemma because it's a major league caliber arm that is in Worcester.
My take on Tolley in the bullpen is I think he could go out there and be dominant right now. If you stuck him in the bullpen for 1 or 2 innings, I think he could be absolutely great. But right now, I think that messes up his development. And if you really think about it, if there's one more pitching injury tomorrow, say Garrett Crochet gets hurt tomorrow, Peyton Tolley is in the major league rotation with Patrick Sandoval and Cutter Crawford on the IL. He's the next man up. So right now, he is your next arm up. So I don't think you need to push him into the bullpen when realistically he's your only pitching depth in the minor leagues that's pitching well. He pitched today and he was very good. Give it 2 or 3 weeks when Patrick Sandoval and Cutter Crawford are ready to go, then maybe you could start having that conversation. But I still don't think it doesn't help him long term. If we get to September and we're in a playoff push and we're 1 or 2 games back and that's what you absolutely need, then Peyton Tolley is going to go in the bullpen and do everything he possibly can to win baseball games. But right now in April, it's not smart to put him in the bullpen.
This is an interesting conversation, but I think Cutter could end up being that piece in the bullpen, especially if the rotation doesn't need him. We'll see when he's ready to come back, but that could be an interesting moving part to the bullpen as well.
Do you have anything else about game 1? We can get into some wins.
Yeah, no, not much. Just overall anemic offense. Not the kind of performance you wanted. But let's move past that and turn the page because the Sox clearly did. So.
Yeah, I have in game 2, my biggest thing was Ranger Suarez finally has
Yep.
his best start of his Red Sox career. He finally looked
Yep.
like the guy he did in Philadelphia. He's efficient over 6 innings, only gave it 3 hits, 6 Ks, 7 whiffs, but he had a lot of called strikes down at the zone. The sinker was very good. I was very happy to see him pitch like he did in Philadelphia for all those years. So that is my biggest takeaway. The offense finally broke out in the 9th inning or the 8th inning, whatever it was. But
5-run 9th.
Yeah, so a big inning in the 9th inning. They finally had the biggest inning of the year, but the whole thing was about Ranger Suarez leading the way. Finally had a good performance. So go ahead. You could go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Not a lot of traffic either with Ranger. He was great. He was the guy that looked like the Red Sox paid $130 million to. He was efficient. He was effective. 84 pitches through 6. And I think you could tell, he had between spring training, then going to the WBC, then back to spring training, and then the regular season starting. He hadn't really been stretched out yet. We touched on that. His first couple starts were rough, but I don't think the panic button was pressed by anyone yet. It was 2 starts in April. If those 2 starts come, end of June, beginning of July, whatever it may be, it's a blip in the radar. Obviously, because it's Boston, first impression, whatever, it's going to be magnified. And the stats are going to look a lot worse because it's the only 2 to go off of. It's not like he's 15 starts into this. But Ranger's going to be fine. We all knew that. And, finally looks like he's been stretched out because he was great last night. He was mixing everything in. Not a lot of hard contact, not a lot of traffic. And obviously, only 7 whiffs, but you love the 6 strikeouts. He looked like the guy early in the San Diego game, and then obviously the guy that was with the Phillies, for a number of years, the guy that the Red Sox paid, and the guy the Red Sox really, paid to be the stopper, and kind of that guy right behind Crochet there with Gray, to get things back on track. And they needed to bounce back after Friday's loss, because if they lose last night, things could snowball going into St. Louis, losing that series. You can't keep stacking series L's on top of each other. And Suarez answered the bell and did exactly what he needed to do. So very, very impressed by what Suarez did, and really a step in the right direction overall for this Red Sox team.
So I don't have the graphics that I normally bring up for each starting pitcher because there was 3 games for this show, but I do have in my notes that he was very sinker heavy, which is different than the first 2 starts where he kind of led with a cutter. So that we're going to get into Brayan Bello as well later today, but they both led with the sinker very heavy, which was a different approach than they have had to start the season. So maybe they made an adjustment, and that kind of helped Ranger Suarez and Brayan Bello have success today. So kind of more what they did last year. The sinker was their lead pitch with the Phillies. The last 2 starts, it was the cutter. So that's very good to see that they're making adjustment with both pitchers. So that's something I wanted to point out. For the next shows, I'll have a graphic with all the usage. I don't have that off the top of my head, but I do know that he led with the sinker, which is different than he has in the last 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And last night he threw the sinker 46.4% of the time. I'm looking at Savant right now. So that was definitely up from any of the other 2 games. And then, it was something that he relied upon, and it was his big pitch. So
I think that's what he needs to do going forward, because one thing a lot of people were talking about with Ranger Suarez was the ABS. He was a guy that lived on the corners and got a lot of help from the umpire. That didn't really matter to me. I know the Cardinals won a lot of ABS challenges with him on the mound and all series long, but he overcame that and he was very good. He kept going to that spot. He looked confident. So I was very happy to see that. That's what we knew we were getting from Ranger Suarez, a cold-blooded guy that didn't care about anything and just went out there and dominated in a big spot. And he did that. And I was very happy to see that. So I had some worries about him starting how he did. I know the WBC and how he didn't get built up, but that was really reassuring to see that he's going to pay off for at least this season. He's going to have a solid season. I'm very confident with him going forward.
Absolutely. And Nick, I know you talked about not having the graphics, but I do have his Savant and usage up right now. So last night used the sinker 46.4% of the time. That was up from his last start where he used it just 16% of the time. The cutter had been his primary pitch in his last start. His changeup was his primary pitch in his last start, using it 32%. That was down to 17.9%. The 4-seam fastball has stayed steady around between 13 and 14% the entire season. So that was pretty steady. The cutter usage has gone down on each of his 3 starts. So his first start, it was just over 30%. Last start, it was 24%. And last night, it was 10.7%. So it's something that, obviously, knowing Andrew Bailey in his 3rd year, he loves to be cutter heavy with these guys. But I think he's recognizing that Suarez's strength is not his cutter. It's his sinker and his changeup. And that's going to be the best mix to utilize going forward. And then the curveball was down to 8.3%. So It's something that I think Bailey, as he gets to know Suarez better, as Suarez gets more settled into the season, is going to it's going to be a learning curve between the two. It's kind of feeling each other out, seeing what works best. But I think overall Bailey is adjusting nicely now, going to Suarez's strengths instead of what Bailey's strengths might be as a pitching coach.
I agree. I think that's a lot to talk about with Ranger. I think I'm very excited for his next start. But there's two guys I wanted to highlight offensively, and we already talked about one with Wilson Contreras. 2 for 4 in this game, 3 RBIs, a big double in the 4th inning to start the scoring. And then Jarren Duran, a guy who's hit the ball very hard. I put a tweet out there today where he's, after his 2-run double or a 3-run double in today's game, I put out there, he also had 3 exit velocities over 103 miles per hour in Saturday's game, and he also went 2 for 5 in an RBI. I think we're about to have a big breakout from Jarren Duran. He's been hitting the ball hard, whether it's on the ground or in the air. I think we're starting to see an adjustment from him, and I'm excited to.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the biggest thing with Duran is getting into a rhythm and being able to play every day. I know we've touched on this, and going into the season, he was a guy who I pegged to be right around 20 homers. Like, I'm expecting a huge season from Jarren. He was great in spring training in the WBC. But I think with Duran getting into a rhythm and playing every day is going to help him a lot and do wonders, because it doesn't help anyone to just sit and not play. And he played in all 3 games in this series and was great. Obviously, 2 hits in the RBI last night, the big bases clearing double today, for 3 RBIs total on the afternoon. Obviously, that was his only hit today, but he's hitting the ball hard. He's making contact. He's a presence at the top of the order. And whether he's leading off or going to be in the 3-hole, depending on the lineup construction that day. I think he's really poised to break out soon. He's right under the Mendoza line right now, but I think it's coming. He's putting together really good at bats, some unlucky contact, hard contact that he's gotten unlucky with. So I completely agree with you, Nick. The Duran breakout is right on the brink of happening.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. A couple things I talked about early in the season or before the season even started was I'd like to see him steal more bases, but he hasn't been getting on enough to even do that. But I think we're about to see a big takeoff with him offensively, steal bases, everything, all sorts of the game. One more thing, he's been in left field when he's been playing, which is really telling that Roman Anthony is going to probably spend most of the time at DH going forward, at least in the early months. I think Duran plays better while he's in the field as well.
That's what I was going to say. He's more engaged. He's a guy that when he's in the field, he's able to, just flush the last at bat, focus on whatever's in the field. If he's DHing and he, pops out, strikes out, whatever it may be, he's got to go sit on the bench for another couple innings before his next at bat. And that's all he's thinking about. So I think he's more engaged and plays better when he's in the field as well. And you utilize his speed out there in the outfield.
Yeah, I totally agree. And right now you can't take Rafael out of the game either. So Roman is on at DH is perfectly fine with me. Let him sort out his issues out there and then revisit it later in the season when one of them slows down.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. You got anything else? I know big 5-run ninth, biggest inning of the season, a big crooked number, kind of jump-started the offense in game 3 as well. But besides that, in game 2, I don't have much.
No, the one thing I wanted to touch on with the 5-run ninth, and obviously it was, for lack of a better term, small ball, but it was a lot of station-to-station singles, keeping the line moving. But that's something that we haven't seen this Red Sox team do, just chip away and tack on. And I think that was a huge momentum piece for the offense. Obviously, they didn't need it per se. Like if they didn't score in the ninth, they still would have been fine and won that game 2-1. It would have been a lot tighter. But I think chipping away and keep continuing to tack on to the lead is huge. Keep the line moving. Nobody trying to do too much up there. You don't have to get the extra base hit. Keep the line moving with a single here or walk there, whatever it may be. And that's gonna pay dividends down the line, because it might not be a 5-run inning, but it might be a 2 or 3-run eighth where you add on insurance and you end up winning a game 5-4 or whatever it may be, because the other team claws back in. So I think the biggest thing for me was keeping the line moving, nobody doing too much, preaching contact, and continuing to make contact. And keep the line moving, and nobody, everyone knew they had a job and they did it. So,
yeah. Before we get into game 3, let's get into Bradley's comment here about Jarren Duran. If you want to talk about it, there's a bunch of different ways you could think about this. I kind of lean both ways. I wanted to keep him. I do still think there's a logjam in the outfield as well, but let's just talk about it. It's a great thing to talk about. We're going to be talking about it all the time. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Bradley, I agree with you. And I think the biggest thing with Jaron, obviously we've talked about Contreras kind of being the leader this year, but Duran is also one of those leaders, especially on the field. And Cora and the organization has preached about, him being a guy that they want their players to look to, that they want, the fan base to come out and see. So it's like in terms of another pseudo leader, Duran fits into that mold in terms of, the way the organization has talked about him. And I think the way he plays on the field is very infectious for the rest of the team. It's kind of like he's the straw that stirs the drink. When he goes, the rest of the offense goes. That's why I kind of like him in that leadoff spot best. I think you're utilizing his skill set more with his speed. Maybe bumping Roman down to the 2 or the 3 spot, and hitting whoever second behind him. Maybe you go Duran, Contreras, Anthony. But the line of construction is a different conversation. But I completely agree. I think the team kind of follows suit. When he's going, the rest of the team is going. And obviously you could say that about a plethora of guys. Contreras has done that this weekend, but I think he is such a cog for that offense, and the way that the roster and the team is built, they're really relying on him to be the guy that he was in 24, closer to the 24 version of Duran than the 25 version of Duran. So I'm with you there, Bradley.
I'll answer it like this. So in the offseason, the last 2 off seasons, actually, we've had a logjam in the outfield, and we needed to resolve it some way. How I've always wanted to do it was just get rid of Yoshida one way or the other. Was trade, do your best to get rid of the contract, or you could just DFA him. That's how I used to think about it. Now he's shown he's one of your better hitters to start the season. I'm not on board of DFAing him, but I think Yoshida is the odd man out when it comes to it. I think when it gets down to the middle of the season and everybody's going well, Yoshida is the worst player out of those 5 outfielders. I think he has the least upside. He has the least power potential. I think Yoshida will be the odd man out in the long run. I think you keep him as a bench bat, as a pinch hitter, a guy that plays once or twice a week. But right now, Jarren Duran has to be playing every single day. Offensively, he has the most upside besides like Roman Anthony or Willier. He has the speed to change a game. Defensively, he's good enough out there. I think last year in left field was an anomaly how bad he was out there. I think he's somewhere between how he was in 2024 and 2025. He's not the greatest left or center fielder of all time. He's not the worst left fielder of all time. He's a good player. I think when it comes down to it, Yoshida's the odd man out, and he'll be getting the least amount of at-bats when it matters most.
Yeah, and I think the other thing with Yoshida is that, when the team is striking out a lot, they really need his on-base skills. But the last 2 nights, they haven't been striking out as much. They've been putting the ball in play, and you can see that's the team. This is the version of the team that they envisioned. So I think overall with him, it's hard because there's no odd man out. Obviously, Rafaela got hit in the hand the last 2 days. I was like, maybe that's how it plays itself out. If it was more serious, glad it's not. Thankfully, he's okay. But I'm sure at some point it will work itself out. Whether it's an injury, unfortunately, or a trade. But yeah, for now, it's just they've continued to kick the can down the road for as long as they can. They've probably overstayed that welcome in terms of kicking the can down the road with 5 outfielders for 4 spots. And, it's tough. I mean, the only way to do it would be putting Rafael at second, but then you'd create a logjam with Meyer or Durbin. So they've kind of put themselves in a tough spot roster construction wise, because I like Yoshida. I like the skill set that he brings to the team. Tough strikeout in the 8th inning on Friday. A rare strikeout for him as well. But it's one of those things where they're going to have to keep finding ways to get guys in. But, I think we've talked about everyone needing to play and get into a rhythm. And Duran is the number one guy who, out of that bunch really needs to continue to play and get into a rhythm. 1 off day a week max. And he's a guy who, almost played in all 162 and 24 and 23, was on pace to play in pretty much every game until the toe injury in late August. And last year, played in the majority of games as well. He's gotten more off days this year than he has. He's on pace for a lot more off days this year than he has at any point in his career as a regular starter. So he needs to play to continue to get into a rhythm and the team to utilize his skill set.
I agree. I mean, that's all I really have on at least this question on Jarren Duran. We'll talk about what he.
Yeah, Bradley, being Cora and juggling that is tough.
Guys lead the way offensively in Story and Contreras. We had Brayan Bello's best start of his season, but I think the biggest thing to talk about today was Story and Contreras' big offensive day.
Absolutely. Both guys with 4 hits. Contreras with a 2-run homer in the first. He got the scoring started early. Great picture of him with the Wally head in the dugout. The Wally head is back. And he just the beat goes on for him. I mean, what more can you say about what he's done? Talk about him being the leader, but also him being the heart and soul of the offense right now. He's up to 302 with a 957 OPS. He's tearing the cover off the ball. He's doing everything you could want. And it's something. It's the team needed a spark, and the team needed to be woken up, and Wilson Contreras has done exactly that. And he's been exactly what the team has needed, and the dropping Trevor Story from out of the 2 spot to the 5 spot has done wonders. 4 hits today, had 6 RBIs in the Milwaukee series. Sometimes it's just a mental thing. Moving from one spot to another, just works wonders. And Story has been putting together much better at bats this week. So been really impressed with that as well.
I agree. Story had his first multi-hit game today, which ended up with being 4 hits. The RBIs is starting to rack up, like you brought up. He's perfect down in the 5 or the 6 spot where he's been put. Don't put him up in the 2 spot. I know we've had a lot of criticism about Cora and who he's been putting in the 2 spot, but right now, leave Story down in the bottom third, middle of the order, and let him continue playing the way he's playing. But my biggest thing I had in my notes for today was how bad NESN was. The camera angle from the dugout, which is basically like outside of the stadium, was awful. The sound cutting out like 4 or 5 times. You have to go to St. Louis feed a couple times. We had 2 different score bugs switching back and forth from the top left corner to the bottom right corner throughout the game. It was just pathetic, and it's been happening all season, and it's been happening last season. It's been happening every single year since 2019. It's been getting worse and worse and worse. And why can't the Red Sox, one of the biggest teams in professional sports, one of the biggest audiences in professional sports, why can't they put out a good broadcast to, on a Sunday afternoon when everyone's sitting on their couch watching and just want to watch a relaxing, good baseball game, a very good, complete baseball game by a team that hasn't been playing well? Finally, the fans get something to watch, and they can't even watch it. It's a pathetic product from a very overpriced, even if you have MLB TV where you can go and change it to the Cardinals broadcast, a lot of people could do that. But if you pay for NESN and NESN 360 and you just want to watch the Red Sox, you couldn't today. And you were scammed. You were literally scammed of watching one of the best games of the season, probably the most complete game of the season. It sucks.
Yeah, I saw a lot of frustrations about that, online. I was toggling, back and forth between the Cardinals and the Sox broadcast. But yeah, definitely tough for a lot of folks out there. And Bradley saying would have been nice to see that home run when it happened, because a lot of people that were watching it just came from the side angle. I know the Red Sox tweeted the video out with the NESN audio on with the regular camera angle. But yeah, I think a lot of people had difficulties with that today. So that was definitely tough. Nick, you want to get into Bello now or anything else on NESN? Nick, you want to get into Bello now or anything else on NESN? So I wanted to get into Bello's pitch usage. I know, Nick, you don't have the typical graphics up. I have his Savant up right here with his pitch usage today. The sinker was just under 40% at 39.5. That's been his highest used pitch in each of his 3 starts this year. The changeup, 29.1%, also his second most used pitch. Excuse me, the cutter. That's been his second most used pitch in all 3 of his starts. So Bailey going back with the cutter and sinker mix. I think that's the biggest thing with Bello, and obviously fewer whiffs today than he had in his previous 2 starts, but a lot more effective and a lot more efficient. And I think that's the biggest thing with Bello. It's like, we know he's not a swing and miss guy. We can live with less swing and miss if he's going to continue to be efficient and effective like he was today. And this was clearly his best start in 2026, almost going the full 7 today.
Yeah, this was more like 2025 Bello, like you brought up, less swing and miss, more ground balls. He had 12 ground balls today, 12 ground ball outs today, so that's very important for Brayan Bello. I think keeping the pitch count down. What was that? 92 pitches today. What was it? I think you just said it.
94.
94 pitches, perfect. I know after 3 innings he was at 35. I always watch that to see how far he can go in the outing, and I instantly said he can go 7 today. That'd be great for the bullpen. Save the pen going into the Minnesota series. He went 6 2/3. Cora gave him a lot of words of encouragement when he came off the mound. Really was excited about that outing and going forward for Brayan Bello. So I'm excited. If Cora was excited about that, 6 2/3 was the longest outing for any Red Sox pitcher this season. So that's something nice we can acknowledge for him. We got Garrett Crochet tomorrow, and I hope he tops it with 7+. But yeah, very encouraging for Brayan Bello. I know it's not a very good offense he faced today, but I was very happy with what he did.
No, you also have to take what you get. I mean, it's he had struggled through the first two starts. The command and the efficiency was not great the first two, and he was able to come into this one, give them length, give them depth. Only 2 strikeouts, but was pitching to contact. That's a typical Brayan Bello start. Really, the only guy who had a ton of success off him was Jordan Walker, but he's killing everyone right now. So I think Walker has finally figured it out. Former top prospect, still only 23 years old. He's really killing it. But aside from him, was really able to hold that offense at bay. Scattered 6 hits. Walked 2, and he did exactly what he needed to do. They needed to come in there today, get a series win, and on the pitching front, he did exactly what he needed to do. And then obviously Story and Contreras, we've talked about them, but those two led the way offensively. I think 4 hits from them is both tremendous. 2 RBIs for Story, 3 for Contreras, and then 3 for Duran. That was really all they needed. It was one of those things where this is the kind of game where this is how they envisioned winning games in 2026. This is how the team was built, around pitching, around manufacturing runs, around doing enough. And obviously, this was more than manufacturing runs. Contreras with the homer early, Duran with the bases clearing double. Didn't need a whole lot besides those two, but to go to the point of how they were built, and they were able to get up early and kind of go to the bullpen for the last couple. And really not have to stretch Bello, where in another situation they might stretch Bello to try to get that last out, or they might have to go to another high leverage guy early. They had enough of a lead as to where they didn't need to do that.
Yeah, I know. Just getting Bradley's question here. How about that 5th inning where he gave up a big hit and didn't fold like he has in the past? I agree with you. That was a big talking point. I almost had a tweet written about that, how he came back and he got a big ground ball after that, got a double play. I was very happy with Brayan Bello's outing today, going the whole 6 2/3. He was competing. He was throwing strikes. I think he had 65% strike percentage. So a very efficient outing all around from start to finish. No really bad innings. Jordan Walker, you brought him up. I want to talk about him. I think he's turning into a superstar. The way he's always had whiff problems. He kind of hit the ball on the ground a little bit too much. Jordan Walker, what he showed me in this series was a superstar with incredible power who can hit balls out of the ballpark with ease. This guy has an insane potential. He's only 23. And if this is how he's going to go going forward, the Cardinals have a superstar who's 6'6", 265, 270 pounds, with a top 5 sprint speed in the sport. If you look it up, he's running fast. He has one of the fastest bat speeds in the sport. This guy, if he can make the contact he's making right now, is going to be a superstar, and I'm super impressed with what I saw. And I don't say that very easily, where I think this guy's going to be a superstar. This guy was nasty.
If you look,
the home run he hit off of Whitlock, oh my God, that was crushed.
If you look at his Savant page, it's all red. He's first in average exit velo, 97.9, first in expected slug, first in expected weighted on base, expected batting average, 97th percentile. Everything is just all red, 95th percentile or above, and his batting run value is in the 99th percentile. So
this is stupid to say, but it's an Aaron Judge profile. Like, that's how ridiculous his profile is. I'm not saying he's going to be Aaron Judge. Obviously, that's like the best player in the sport type of thing, but he has that kind of skill set and tools. Like, that is his profile. And if he hits the 99 percentile, like his percentile, that's who he is. If not, he's somewhere in between that. And
Walker had 11 home runs between 24 and 25. He's already at 7 this year. And he's not
12th. Slowing down. He's having great at bats. He's hitting the ball insanely hard. That ball he hit out today was just a mishit. The ball off of Whitlock was a bomb to straightaway center field. He's a great player, and hopefully he's put it all together, and this isn't just a flash in the pan, because this has been like 2 or 3 years where he's kind of just not done anything, and he finally put it all together. So I'm very happy to see that.
Baseball's art.
And I'm happy we're done with him.
Yeah, baseball's a hard game. He came up when he was, 20, 21 years old. So it's like it's hard, especially with the expectations of being a top prospect. So, good for Jordan. Hope he keeps it rolling in St. Louis. And Heim Bloom's got a couple really great young players with him, with Weatherholt, the second baseman. They're trying to build a young core, and those two are going to be at the center of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. You want to get into the next the series in Minnesota?
Absolutely. So the
Of
Twins,
course.
surprisingly 9-7, half game back of Cleveland, who's playing right now against Atlanta for first place in the AL Central. They are tied with Cleveland for the most wins in the American League. They both have 9. The rest of the bunch has 8. A bunch of teams with 8, but those two are the only two with 9 wins in the American League. So a bit of a surprising start for the Twins. They swept the Tigers last week, four-game sweep in Minnesota, and then just went to Toronto this weekend and took 2 out of 3. So that's kind of what's gotten them going, this week going 6-1 from Monday to Sunday. So they've been playing much better baseball. A team that was expected to be one of the worst in baseball this year so far has not looked as such. So on paper, still should be a series where the Red Sox should take advantage with the pitching matchups, but got to go out there and play the games. Tomorrow night, 7:40 at Target Field, Garrett Crochet goes up against Bailey Ober. Crochet 2-1 on the year with a 3.12 ERA and 22 strikeouts. Going up against Bailey Ober, he's 1-0 with a 5.27 ERA, only 7 strikeouts on the season. So definitely, anytime you have Crochet pitching, that's a matchup that you feel like you should win. The pitching matchup on paper here is definitely a matchup that you feel like you should win. Crochet enters this one with 22 strikeouts, like I said, top 10 in the American League, but one less game than a lot of the league leaders. So I think he will be back atop of the leaderboard after tomorrow night. Tuesday, 7:40 start again as well. Sonny Gray, he's been excellent thus far, especially his last two. He's 2-0 with a 2.76 ERA. He's punched out 10 batters. He goes up against former Phillies top prospect Micah Bell. He's 0-2 with a 6.08 ERA and 13 punch-outs through his 2 starts this year. And then the series finale on Wednesday, 1:40 start in the afternoon, getaway day, Jackie Robinson day as well. Connolly early, doesn't have a win-loss record, 2.63 ERA and 15 strikeouts. Goes up against Simeon Woods Richardson, 0-2 with a 4.60 ERA and 8 strikeouts thus far. So a big opportunity for the Red Sox to go into Minnesota, especially with probably their 3 best pitchers, the guys who have looked best, consistently across the board thus far this year, and a chance to really make headway. I think the Red Sox take at least 2 out of 3, and you know what? Screw it. I said sweep this past weekend. They took 2 out of 3. They'll do me right this time. The Red Sox will go into Minnesota, sweep the Twins, and come back to Fenway with a 9-9 record, getting ready to face the Tigers. So I think they take advantage of the pitching matchups. I think the offense will do enough. Obviously, Minnesota, especially this time of year, is always a hard place to play, with how cold it is. And I'm pulling up the weather right now to see what the projected forecast is. Tomorrow night, the weather will be fine. It'll be in the high 60s to low 70s for this series. So should be in a good spot.
My biggest takeaway from just the pitching matchups is I'm glad we missed Joe Ryan. We're going to get a very favorable pitching matchups going forward with Crochet versus Ober, Gray and Abel, and Early and Woods Richardson. But I'm very happy no Joe Ryan in this series. That's the biggest thing.
Yep.
I kind of agree with you. I'm going to go 2 out of 3. I think I win the first 2. I hope.
Yeah, I mean, I think Nick going with a 2 out of 3 and getting. So you think 2 out of 3 and then getting back to Fenway at 8-10.
Yeah, I if they get back to 8-10, that'd be. Well, wouldn't it be 7? Or no, you're right. 8-10.
No, it would be 8-10. It would be 8-10.
It would be 8-10. You go back to 8-10. You got the Tigers after that, right? Or
yeah, play Detroit and New York,
and then hopefully you kind of just right the ship. You're back to 500-ish, and you play good baseball going forward.
Yeah,
that's kind of how I hope the season goes. As long as the pitching staff is pitching like they are, at least this last time through the order, this team will be fine. If they pitch like they first 2 times through the order, this team isn't going anywhere. They don't have the offense to make for it. So that's really how this team is going to go for the whole season, in my opinions. Well, I forgot what I was going to say about this Twins series, but yeah, Crochet tomorrow night. I expect to go out there and dominate a pretty bad lineup. Royce Lewis just went on the IL. They don't have all their studs out there in Minnesota. They don't have I think Garrett Crochet will easily take care of them. In game 2, Sonny Gray's facing an old team again. That's something we said multiple times this season. He's faced the Reds. He's faced the who else did he face? No, he didn't face a former team, but he faced the Brewers, who's faced
St.
a lot
Louis.
in his. Yeah, you're right, St. Louis.
St. Louis,
and
then St. Louis, and then Cincinnati, and then he's faced either former teams or teams that he has gone against a lot in the Central.
And then Mika Abel is a guy they got from the Phillies. You touched at that, but I wanted to bring up his spring training. He was incredible this spring training. Yep. He hasn't been great so far to start the season, but I do think he has great stuff. I was very high on him coming into the season. So I think that could be a game that he goes out there and he pitches well, and the Red Sox kind of don't have a great offensive performance, but I'm still going to take that game as a win. I think that's not a very high percentage of happening. But I do think there's a chance. Don't be surprised if you've never heard of Mick Abel and he goes out there and pitches well. That's kind of what I'm saying. I think he has a chance to go out there and pitch well. And then the third game, it's a weird start time, a 1:40 start time on a Wednesday.
Getaway day.
I could see a getaway day if they win the next 2. Cora kind of puts out a punt lineup and they get out of there with 2 out of 3 wins. So that's what I'm going to go with. I really hope they sweep and we get back to 500 at Fenway Park. That would be ideal. But one more thing I do want to say, I love 7:40 start times. I think that's my favorite start time. I hate the 6:40. Sometimes you don't get there in time. You're not settled in for the 6:40. I really don't like the 6:40 time when I'm trying to go to the game. I know if I try to go to like a Marlins game, I can never get there in time. You'd always be late. But yeah, I like the 7:40 start time. You can get settled in. You can eat food. You can be ready for the game, and it doesn't end at midnight. So 7:40, right. My favorite start time. 1:40 on a weekday, not my favorite start time. But it'll be hard to watch that one. But yeah, I don't have much else from that series. I expect the Red Sox to play well. If they don't, we'll probably be upset again and have another Friday night freak out like we did talking about this team. Yeah. We did get a comment here from Brent, though, I do want to bring up.
Sure.
It's from Bello's start. Let's see if it comes up.
Yep. You just had it up.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is a bit late to the chat, but feel free to ignore the changeup talked about early in Bello's career. Is down a clip at 13% pitch usage, but his sinker has become dominant as a huge pitch for Bello.
Percent pitch usage, but his sinker has become dominant and is a huge pitch for Bello. It's up a tick, and it's well up from his average of 93 miles per hour in 2025 to 94 so far this season with 37% usage rate. We did talk about both Ranger Suárez and Bello's usage rate of their sinker going way up in this start compared to the last 2 starts. Did you remember exactly what you said? Suárez's usage rate was at like 40 something, and it was down at like 16 to 18 before.
For the changeup,
yeah. Do you have anything on Bello? I didn't have his graphic pulled up, but
for what, his usage today or just this season?
I kind of want to know about the sinker velocity. Is it really velocity up a tick?
Let's see. I'm going to pull that up right now. Yeah. So I can go game by game or season, or just by this season.
Before we bring that up, there's a point I do want to talk about. There's kind of been an issue with Bello's changeup being too hard. They kind of want him to sit around 86 to 87.
There wasn't enough differential between the fastball and the changeup.
But if his sinker mile per hour is rising, then maybe the changeup can stay at the 88 mile per hour, 89 mile per hour zone. If the sinker is going to go up to 95, 96, that differential will be fine. But when the sinker is at 92, 93 and the changeup's at 89, you're right. That's not a big difference. That's not a big difference for the hitter to, you can still adjust the 3 mile per hour difference, not an 8 to 9 mile per hour difference.
Yeah. So I have everything up, Brent. Thus far this season, everything is down a couple ticks. So just for reference, 2025, the sinker averaged 95.3 miles an hour, the fastball 95.1, and the changeup 88.8. This season, the changeup's at 87.8, so down 1 tick. The 4-seam fastball at 93 compared to 95.1, so down 2 ticks. The sinker down from 95.3 to 93.9. So everything is down a couple ticks, but I think both being down a couple ticks isn't actually an issue because I think, the difference between 93 and 87 is more substantial than 95 to 89 in terms of the fastball changeup mix, especially with that movement, or the sinker changeup mix, excuse me. So, his overall, the ticks being down is fine. And then when you look at his usage, especially, when it comes to this season, right now, the sinker is being used 37.1% of the time, and the cutter at 25.8, the changeup down to 13.5. So I think maybe mixing in a little bit less of the cutter and going more of the changeup, because the cutter and sinker can be a little bit similar in terms of velocity and movement. Obviously, movements in different parts of the zone, but maybe that's a way they get into it as well, with using the changeup a bit more and the cutter a bit less coming off that. Obviously, Bailey's strength is utilizing guys' cutters, and that's kind of how he likes to mold a lot of the pitchers that he works with. But we'll see as it goes on. Obviously, this season a small sample for Bello, so that is something to watch going forward. Though I think how the pitch mix and usage evolves over time.
I don't think Bello needs to throw the cutter as much as he does. He lives
Probably not.
when he lives on the ground when getting ground balls. He pitches so much better. Today he had 12 ground ball outs. He led with the sinker, and that's what he should be leading with going forward. That's just my takeaway on it. Bello and Bailey can do whatever they want. But I would, if I was the pitching coach and I was in charge, obviously I'm not. I would be leading with 40-ish% sinker with Brayan Bello starts going forward.
Yeah, definitely. Nick,
I don't think I'd go with the Garrett. No, I don't think I'd ever put him like the Garrett Crochet where he's going to lead like 60% with his fastball or anything. But I think he needs to be at 40-ish%, not in that 30. The more sinkers, the better with him, unless it's a guy that a lineup that lifts and can attack that sinker and can hit it in the air. Right now, against a weaker lineup like the Cardinals, just sinker, get outs, work efficiently. He got the longest outing of the Red Sox season, so that's really big, and I think he was fine today. So sinker is what I would go with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't have
Nick, I should have one more final thought on the series, and I wanted to touch on Contreras overall. We talked about Contreras being the leader, being the spark plug, being a guy who's been ready to go since day one. He's been exactly what the team has needed thus far. 16 hits overall in 67 plate appearances. He's hitting .302, has a WRC plus of 181, has a WOBA of 434. He's slugging .509, getting on base at a 448 clip. For a team that was looking for a consistent offensive presence outside of Anthony, you have a guy in Wilyer Abreu, entered the day today, third in the league in average. Wilson Contreras has stepped up as that external piece. When we talked about losing Bregman, talked about not signing impact bats, they probably still need a bit more, but Contreras has filled that void thus far through these first 16 games in a massive way. Clubhouse leadership, the fire and passion that he brings, because I think we, especially when the Sox were skidding, they lacked energy, they lacked playing with aggression. He's brought everything that the team has needed and then some, and it showed up with his play on the field. It's a lot easier to follow suit for a guy who's hitting the way he's hitting than a guy who's hitting 210 with a homer and 6 runs driven in. So been very impressed with Contreras thus far, and that's got to keep rolling if the team's going to keep going where they need to go.
One more note on Contreras. His defense has been absolutely incredible at first base. He is at the top of the leaderboard at every defensive stat for first baseman. If you made a highlight reel of his good plays to start the season, it'd be longer than any Red Sox first baseman in the last 15-ish years for a whole season. And he only played like 15 games. Mitch Moreland was decent over there, but this guy is great. He is filthy at first base defensively. And I'm very excited the Red Sox with a team that has a little bit issue throwing, especially with Trevor Story at shortstop. I'm glad this is the guy we have at first base compared to Pete Alonso. I wanted Pete Alonso. He's off to a bad start, but when you compare the defense,
he'll be fine.
It's going to be a big difference. I do agree with you. Pete Alonso is probably going to hit 35 bombs when it comes down to it. But right now, the guy we have at first base is an incredible defensive first baseman, and he's going to hit this season.
Yeah.
He's going to be great at Fenway Park.
And right now, 93rd percentile in Savant in outs above average. He's got 2 OAA thus far through the 16 games. So he's definitely answering the bell. And for a position that was probably considered a position of weakness, obviously, Casas, that whole situation is an unknown. Contreras has filled in very seamlessly and then some. So been very impressed with him, and hope to keep it going in Minnesota. And to quote the guys from Section 10 on Twitter today, I don't remember if it was Carabas or Steve or just the general account. They do the Clark's Ketchup Series MVP. And I think it was Carabas who tweeted it, but he said, Wilson Contreras wants to make sure nobody else touches a bottle of ketchup this year. And with the way he's playing, he's going to win every one of those series MVPs from that panel. So just been great to watch him play, and, let's keep it going in Minnesota. Let's go win another series.
I totally agree. He's been the best player so far. I mean, him and Wilyer Abreu have been carrying the offense, but the last 2 series, it's been Wilson Contreras completely carrying this team. I agree, Bradley. I think I just brought up Mitch Moreland was the closest to him, and I think Contreras is better. You brought up Casas at first base. He'd be the only really depth that we have in the organization at first base. If you put a fully healthy Casas next to a fully healthy Wilson Contreras, and you just watch them play first base every single day, the difference would be incredible what you're watching. Casas, I don't think is bad at first base, but the difference in Wilson Contreras this season is awesome. I didn't expect this good of a first baseman to make this big of a difference, but he really is. He had 2 or 3 good plays today, a pick during a double play, a couple balls he smothered that I think probably get by a Tristan Casas or a guy like Pete Alonso. I just been very happy with what he's brought to the team. If you look at what Alex Bregman's brought to the Cubs so far, Wilson Contreras has been a lot better. If you go looking around, like Pete Alonso, he's been a lot better.
That game tying hit on Saturday was nice from Bregman, though. 2 outs, bats were ice cold, and then they got 2 runners on, and Bregman tied the game. So, but yeah, Contreras has obviously thus far outproduced Bregman. But, Contreras is not going to be compared to Bregman because it should have been Bregman and Contreras, Bregman and Alonso. Third base is still third base. Obviously, Durbin's had a great defensive season thus far. So that's a separate debate that we can get into at another time. But overall, great to have Wilson on the team, and looking forward to keep it going in Minnesota.
Yeah, with that, I don't have anything else. James, do you?
No, let's go win another series. Let's keep stacking wins and get back to Fenway at 500 or close to it.
Yeah, at least win 2 out of 3, win another series. A sweep would be amazing.
Sweep
them. Get back to Fenway at 9-9, and then I'd be very, very happy going forward. And then I'd be very hopeful and optimistic going forward if they go 9-9, going back to Fenway Park. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. There was a lot of good questions on tonight's live, for Bradley to Cody to Brent. We had a lot of great interaction tonight. So thank you guys for watching. We'll probably be back tomorrow night after the Twins game. We'll see. But if not, we'll be back at the end of the series. But thanks for watching. We'll be out on all platforms, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and on Twitter if you want to rewatch it there as well. But thanks for watching, guys. See you later.